The sound of water lapping against the shore was the only thing breaking the silence that morning. Mist floated low over the lake, wrapping the trees and wooden docks in a ghostly haze. It was early, too early for anyone to be out, but somewhere near the edge of the frozen water a faint cry echoed. A fisherman named Ardo stopped mid-step, his breath turning white in the cold. He followed the sound, his boots crunching over the thin layer of frost. As he approached, he saw something that made his chest tighten. A small bundle half wrapped in a wool blanket, trembling beside a birch tree. The baby's cheeks were red from the wind. His eyes, a pale, icy blue, stared up at Arto with confusion and fear. "My God," the man whispered, removing his gloves to lift the child. "Who would leave you here?" When the authorities arrived, they found no trace of the person who had abandoned him. Just small footprints leading to the water's edge, and then nothing. The lake had swallowed the rest of the story. The child was named Elias, after a local legend about a boy who survived a winter storm by following the sound of angels. To everyone in the village, it felt symbolic, as if fate had spared him for a reason. Soon after, Elias was adopted by a kind couple from Helsinki, Mikael and Sari Lehtinen, who had spent years trying to have a child. They took him home wrapped in blankets, whispering promises of love and safety. His new life was full of warmth, bedtime stories, snowy Christmases, and laughter echoing through their small apartment. But there were moments, small and quiet, when the lake called to him. When he would wake up from a dream soaked in sweat, hearing the splash of water and a voice calling his name, Elias. Mikael would rush to his room, hold him close, and say softly, "It's just a dream, son. You're safe now." But even as a child, Elias felt deep down that those dreams weren't just dreams. They were memories. Years passed. He grew into a calm, observant boy, always drawn to reflections, mirrors, puddles, windows. Water fascinated him, though he couldn't explain why. At school, he excelled in art and photography, capturing stillness in a way that made others stop and look twice. Yet behind the quiet talent, there was a question no one could answer. Who left me there? And why? Sari often avoided the topic. Some things are better left in the past, she'd say, smiling gently. But Elias could see the tension in her eyes. She was afraid of losing him. When he turned 18, Mikael handed him a small wooden box. Inside was a single photograph, a shot of the lake, taken the morning he was found. The mist, the shore, the place where his life had begun. "Whatever you're looking for," Mikael said, "I hope you find it. But remember, you've always been our son." Elias smiled, but something inside him stirred again. The lake, the mist, the silence. They were calling him back, whispering a story unfinished. He didn't know it yet, but that call would lead him down a path filled with revelations, pain, and a truth more human, and more heartbreaking, than he ever imagined. If you've ever felt the pull of your past, wondering who you truly are, stay until the end. Elias's journey will make you believe in second chances. If this story has already touched you, hit like, subscribe for more emotional true life stories, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you found out your whole life began with a mystery like this? 25 years later, the mist still hung over the same lake, but the world around it had changed. In Helsinki, Elias Lehtinen had become a respected photographer, known for his haunting landscapes and portraits that captured loneliness in beautiful ways. His work had been featured in galleries, his name whispered in artistic circles as the man who paints with light. But inside, Elias felt hollow. Each time he pointed his camera at water, a river, a pond, the reflection of city lights on wet asphalt, his chest tightened. He didn't know why, but he always lowered his lens before pressing the shutter, as if something unseen was staring back at him. One night, after a successful exhibition, he dreamed again. The same dream he had as a child, the cry, the cold, and the sound of water swallowing a voice. But this time, the dream went further. He saw a woman kneeling near the shore, whispering words in Finnish he didn't fully understand. Her hands trembled as she wrapped a baby in a blanket. Then she looked up, and her eyes, blue like his, met his gaze before fading into the mist. Elias woke up shaking, his heart pounding. He tried to go back to sleep, but couldn't. The image of that woman, her eyes, her fear, burned in his mind. By morning, he had made up his mind. He was going back. The drive north took nearly 6 hours. Snow fell gently over the highway as Elias's car sliced through the white landscape. Every kilometer felt like traveling backward through time. He hadn't told anyone where he was going, not even his adoptive parents. He just knew that he needed answers. When he finally reached the small lakeside village, it looked almost untouched by the years. Wooden cabins, quiet roads, smoke rising from chimneys. The same silence, the same stillness. Only the trees had grown taller, silent witnesses to everything that had happened. He checked into a small guest house run by an elderly woman named Isla, who peered at him through thick glasses. "You're not from around here," she said with a smile. "No," Elias replied, hesitating. "But I was once, a long time ago." Isla tilted her head, curious. "Ah, you mean the boy from the lake." Elias froze. "You know that story?" "Everyone around here knows," she said quietly. "A baby left by the water found by Arto the fisherman. The police searched for the mother, but she vanished. Some say she drowned herself that night." The words hit Elias like ice. "Drowned?" he whispered. Isla nodded, folding her hands. "Others say she survived, that she was seen months later in another village, alone and sick. But no one ever proved it. It's a sad tale." Elias sat in silence for a long moment. The dream, the woman's face. Could it be her? Later that evening, unable to sleep, he walked down to the shore. The moonlight shimmered on the water like liquid silver. He felt the same strange pull, the same sense of familiarity. He knelt and touched the icy surface, and his reflection wavered like a memory coming alive. A faint sound startled him. Footsteps behind. He turned and saw a shadow standing near the trees. An old man, wrapped in a heavy coat, watching him. "Are you Elias?" the man asked. "Yes. Who are you?" The stranger hesitated, his eyes glinting under the moonlight. "My name is Arto," he said softly. "I was the one who found you here, 25 years ago." Elias's breath caught. The lake suddenly seemed colder, the world heavier. He didn't know it yet, but this meeting would open the door to secrets buried deeper than the lake itself. What would you do if the man who once saved your life appeared again, holding the key to your forgotten past? Arto's small cabin sat a few meters from the lake, its walls lined with old photographs, maps, and newspaper clippings. The air smelled of pine and tobacco. Elias sat quietly by the fire while the old man poured them both coffee. "I never thought I'd see you again," Arto said, settling into his chair. "When they took you away, I told myself it was for the best, but I've always wondered if you'd ever come back." Elias looked around, his eyes catching on a framed black and white photo of a young woman standing by the lake. Her hair was long, her expression unreadable. "Who is she?" he asked. Arto's eyes flickered toward the frame. "That's Lena. She lived here once. The same year I found you." The name hit him like a whisper from his dreams. Lena. Arto hesitated before continuing. She was quiet, kept to herself. Some said she was hiding from someone. Others said she'd lost her mind after her husband died in an accident on the lake. No one really knew. He sighed. "But after you were found, she disappeared. Same night. No trace." Elias's voice trembled. "Do you think she was my mother?" Arto's gaze softened. "I can't say for sure, but you have her eyes." The fire crackled between them. The words lingered like ghosts. Elias spent the next morning walking through the village, talking to whoever remembered the story. Most people just shook their heads. Some were kind, others wary. But one woman, Carrie, the oldest resident in town, looked at him and froze. "You're her boy," she said, her voice breaking. Elias's heart raced. "You knew her?" Carrie nodded slowly. "I knew Lena. She wasn't crazy, no matter what they said. She was afraid. People here judged her because she wasn't married when she got pregnant. Her family cut her off. She had no one. Elias listened, feeling both rage and sadness rising inside him. She loved that child. And Carrie continued. She'd walk by the lake every day, talking to the baby, singing to him. But that winter was cruel. There was no food, no heat, and she was sick. The night before you were found, she came to me. She said, "If I leave him by the lake, maybe someone kind will find him. Someone who can give him more than I can." Tears filled Elias's eyes. He whispered, "She didn't abandon me out of hate." "No," and Carrie said softly, "she did it out of love, the kind that breaks you." The next day, Elias returned to Arto's cabin with this revelation burning in his chest. Arto listened quietly, then opened a small drawer and handed him something. A faded envelope, yellow with age. "I found this the morning after you were taken," he said. "It was half buried in the snow. I never knew if it was meant for you." Elias's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a photograph, Lena holding a baby wrapped in a wool blanket. On the back, in delicate handwriting, were the words, "If you ever find this, my son, know that I loved you every second I had to let you go." Elias pressed the photo to his chest. The air in the cabin seemed to hum with something sacred. Grief, love, and forgiveness tangled together. That night he sat by the lake again. The moonlight shimmered across the water and he felt her presence, not in the cold wind or the silence, but in the warmth that spread through him. For the first time, the lake didn't scare him. It comforted him. But then, just as peace began to settle over him, Arto appeared again, holding something Elias had never seen before. It was a small wooden box, carved with intricate symbols. "I think this belonged to her," Arto said. "I found it years ago, buried near the birch tree where I found you." Elias took the box, his hands trembling. He could feel there was something inside, something that would change everything. Elias sat at the small wooden table in Arto's cabin, the mysterious box before him. It was small enough to fit in his hands, yet heavy with years of silence. Its carvings, swirling patterns that resembled waves and eyes, seemed to shimmer under the firelight. For a long moment he just stared at it, afraid of what it might reveal. Then slowly he lifted the lid. Inside was a folded piece of fabric, old but carefully preserved. A baby's blanket, the same one from the photo. Beneath it lay a small silver pendant in the shape of a tear, engraved with a single name, Elias. And under that, a letter. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting delicate, trembling but beautiful. He unfolded it with shaking hands and began to read. "My dear Elias, if you are reading this, then the world was kinder to you than it ever was to me. I pray that someone took you in, that you grew up loved and safe. You must know why I left you, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Your father, Tuomas, died before you were born. When the village found out I was carrying you, they turned their backs on me. My family said I brought shame to them. There was nowhere to go. That winter, the cold came early. I was weak, sick, and hungry, and the baby in my arms was all I had left. The night I left you by the lake, I begged for a miracle. I thought the water would take me, but instead, it took my prayers and gave them to someone who could love you better than I could. If you ever find this, my son, please forgive me. I never stopped loving you. Lena." Elias read the letter over and over, the ink blurring as tears fell onto the paper. Every word felt like a heartbeat he had missed for years. "She didn't abandon me," he whispered. "She saved me." Arto placed a hand on his shoulder. "You were her hope, Elias, and she was yours. She gave you the chance to live." Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside, a deep calm settled in Elias's chest. For the first time in his life, he understood. The ache he'd carried wasn't just loss. It was love that had nowhere to go. He decided he needed to find where she had been buried. Arto told him there was no official record, no grave in the village. "Some say she walked north before the thaw," he said softly. "No one ever saw her again." Elias spent the next day searching old records, church books, and newspapers. At last, In a forgotten box in the town hall, he found a death certificate. Leena Korhonen, deceased, 1998, buried near Kuusamo, northern Finland. He drove there that night. The snow fell in thick silence and the road wound through endless forests. When he reached the small cemetery, the sky was streaked with faint northern lights, green ribbons twisting in the dark. He walked between the gravestones until he saw her name carved into a simple stone. Leena Korhonen, 1972-1998. Love endures in silence. Elias knelt before it, the box clutched to his chest. He placed the pendant and the blanket at the base of the stone, whispering, "You gave me life, and I finally found you." The wind rose gently, rustling the birch leaves nearby. For a second he swore he heard her voice, faint, carried through the cold air. "I knew you'd come home." He smiled through his tears. The ache in his chest began to fade, replaced by something softer. Gratitude. Peace. As he turned to leave, the lights in the sky shimmered brighter, painting the snow in emerald and gold. It was as if the universe itself was telling him. The past no longer owned him. But just as he reached the car, his phone buzzed. A message from Sari, his adoptive mother. "We need to talk, Elias. There's something we never told you, about the day we adopted you." Elias froze. His heart skipped a beat. He had thought the story was complete, but the message told him otherwise. Elias sat in his car for a long time, staring at the glowing message on his phone screen. "There's something we never told you." The snow kept falling softly, each flake melting against the window. After a few minutes, he took a deep breath and called. Sari's voice was trembling when she answered. "Elias, thank God you're safe. Mikael and I have been worried sick." "I'm fine," he said quietly. "I found her. My mother." There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, Sari whispered, "I know." Elias frowned. "You know?" "Yes," she said, tears audible in her voice. "We knew about Leena." He gripped the steering wheel, confused. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because when we adopted you, the agency asked us to promise something. They said your mother had left a note, not the one you found, another one, asking that you never be told where you came from. She wanted you to grow up free of her pain. We agreed because we thought it was the kindest thing." Elias leaned back, staring into the dark. "You were protecting me." "We thought we were," Sari replied. "But maybe we were protecting ourselves too. We were afraid you'd leave us one day to find her." Tears filled his eyes again, but this time, they weren't from anger. "You didn't lose me," he said softly. "You gave me the chance to find myself." He could hear Sari crying quietly on the other end. "You've always been our son, Elias. That will never change." When the call ended, Elias sat there for a while, the world outside glowing faintly under the northern lights. Everything that had once been broken inside him seemed to fit together. His mother's love, his adoptive parents' care, Arto's kindness. All of it had carried him here. He drove back to Helsinki the next morning, the sun rising slowly over the snowfields. When he arrived home, Mikael and Sari were waiting by the door. They hugged him for a long time. No words needed. Over the following days, Elias began to photograph again. Not the lonely gray images he once made, but warm portraits filled with life and light. His next exhibition was called The Water Remembers. Every photo showed reflections of lakes, rivers, melting snow. But in each one there was a trace of something deeper: forgiveness. During the opening night, a journalist asked, "What inspired this collection?" Elias smiled gently. "I used to think my story began with being abandoned," he said. "Now I know it began with love, the kind that takes courage to let go." He paused, his gaze drifting toward one photograph of the lake where everything had started. The mist hovered over the water just like it did the morning he was found. "I think," he continued, "that sometimes we have to return to the place where our hearts were broken, to realize they were never really lost." The audience was silent. Some people wiped their eyes, others simply nodded. as if they too carried their own forgotten stories by some invisible lake. That night, Elias stood by the window of his apartment, looking out at the frozen river below. He could almost see her, Liina, smiling faintly in the reflection. "I found peace, Mom," he whispered. "You can rest now." The city lights shimmered on the water, and for the first time in his life, Elias felt completely whole. Sometimes the people who leave us behind are the very ones who teach us what love truly means. If Elias's journey moved you, leave a comment below. What part of his story touched you the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes in the healing power of love and forgiveness.